like to call the November 17th meeting of the Salina City Commission to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Vanier.
Here.
Commissioner Jelka.
Here.
Commissioner Larson.
Here.
Commissioner Peck.
Here.
Commissioner Perney.
Here.
I'd like to invite everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now is time for the Citizens Forum, a time for citizens to come before the Commission to share their views on anything that is not on the official agenda. Is there anyone here from the public today? No? We'll go on to awards and proclamations.
Item 4.1, the day of November 20, 2008 as Great American Smokeout Day in the City of Salina. Daniel Craig, Tobacco Program Coordinator with Central Kansas Foundation, will read the proclamation.
Who's Daniel Craig? Oh, okay.
Mayor, Commissioners, November 20th is the Great American Smokeout, and so I'll be reading the proclamation, but first I want to let several people here introduce themselves.
I'm Carolyn Carpenter, Community Chair for the Tobacco Prevention Coalition.
I am Ted Mitten. I'm a citizen.
I'm Jamie Hitchcock. I'm a senior at Southeast of Saline and a trust officer.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, and I'm Daniel Craig, the Tobacco Program Coordinator at Central Kansas Foundation. The Great American Smokeout was inaugurated in 1976, and it was designed to inspire and encourage smokers to quit smoking for one day in hopes that by quitting for one day that they would quit for a lifetime. And so I'll read the proclamation. Whereas nearly 18% of Kansas adults smoke cigarettes and are at risk of tobacco-related diseases, including cancer, heart disease, stroke, and other serious and costly health problems. And whereas more than 50% of Kansas adults who smoke cigarettes stopped smoking for one day or longer in the previous year because they were trying to quit smoking. And whereas the 2006 Health Consequences of Involuntary Smoke Exposure to Tobacco Smoke, a report of the Surgeon General, determined that there is no safe level of exposure to secondhand smoke. And whereas the scientific evidence shows that secondhand smoke exposure causes serious diseases, including lung cancer, heart disease, and respiratory illness, including bronchitis and asthma. And whereas for 32 years, millions of smokers have participated in the American Cancer Society's Great American Smokeout, a day in which they give up cigarettes for 24 hours in the hope they may quit permanently. And whereas a significant number of those who gave up cigarettes for one day were able to quit the tobacco addiction altogether. And whereas this demonstration of this significant number of success suggests that the Great American Smokeout has potential for improving the health of the citizens of Salina, Kansas, I, Mayor John K. Vanier II, do hereby proclaim November 20th, 2008 as the Great American Smokeout Day.
Thank you very much. And what activities do you have planned?
We have a variety of activities. We have a lot of youth events going on, so I'm going to turn it over.
We've had Daniel come out to our school a lot of times this year and last, and he sets up a booth during our lunch hours, and it's all about why you shouldn't smoke and why you shouldn't chew. And last year at the end of the year we did a Welcome to the Jungle theme end of the year party, and it was all about why it was a fun environment for all of our students to get together and without the influence of drugs and alcohol. And we had Red Ribbon Week the last 2 weeks of October, and we had a day just dedicated to smoking, and we had a breathing through the straw exercise during lunch where you just had to breathe through the straw, and it demonstrated what a smoker does. And then we had another day dedicated just to chewing, and we had a Tootsie Roll and just chewed it until it was gone, and that's kind of like how chewers are. They can't stop chewing. And we already have a lot of posters up around our school about smoking and facts about it and stuff. And we're getting more posters put up around our school, and we are also planning another end of the school year party for our students.
Very good. Thank you very much. Daniel, I have a copy of the proclamation for you.
Okay, I do have a couple more quick
I'm sorry,
events.
go ahead.
Spangles on Thursday is going to offer a free turkey-on-turkey pita sandwich for anyone who brings in a pack of cigarettes that's at least 3/4 full. And the Salina office was kind of the first one that did that, and now they're going to do that throughout their entire corporation. And then also, you may have seen some of the secondhand smoke educational materials, banners, posters, signs in the community. So I did bring a T-shirt, and then we also have a snake that you're welcome to look at. And then if you would like a T-shirt or a snake, I would be happy to get one of those for you as well.
Very good.
Okay. It's part of their snake ad, huh? Snake ad.
And just in conclusion, we'd just like to thank you for all of your efforts in Saline County for helping to make our community a safer and a healthier community for all of us to live in.
We appreciate all you're doing, too. Thank you. We have no public hearings or items scheduled for a certain time, so we'll go on to the consent agenda.
Item 6.1, approve the minutes of November 3rd, 2008. Item 6.2, amend the 2008 sales tax sub CIP to include the design and construction of a family aquatic park.
Are there any items the commission would like pulled from the consent agenda? If not, I'd accept a motion.
Mayor Vanier, I move approval of the consent agenda. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. Development business.
Item 7.1, application number PDD 08-3, requesting an amended preliminary and final development plan approval and a change in underlining zoning district classification from C2 to R2 on a portion of lots 1 and 2, all of lots 3, 4, and 5, and 6, and a portion of lots 7, 8, and 9, Block A in the Georgetown addition. Sub-item 7.1A, first reading ordinance number 08-10473.
Mr. Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This is a companion item, 7.1 and 7.2, that relate to the same piece of property. The first item deals with a proposed change in the land use, and the second item deals with a proposed change in the layout for the property. What we have is a very old shopping center plan that was first proposed back in the late 1970s to develop a neighborhood shopping center on the north side of East Crawford, north of the Quick Shop. And the Quick Shop is really the only commercial activity that has ever taken place on that property since its inception. And in 1993, there was a plan to convert the north portion of the block facing Village Lane to townhome development, and that has now occurred. We now have a buyer who's interested in purchasing that middle block and wants to convert it from neighborhood shopping center to a townhome development. And so we've got 10 townhome units at the north end of the block. This plan, as proposed, would take what was a 30,000 square foot shopping center building with 185 parking spaces and converting that to 15 townhome units plus one lot for future commercial development down along the Crawford frontage. And this historically has been a planned development district, and one of the parts about a PDD is it does allow for customization of certain requirements, and the requests here, because it is an infill site and very tight, is that they are requesting to be allowed to have an 85-foot depth of building lot with 20-foot front yards and 15-foot rear yards. That's reflected on their townhome plan. They would also result in having slightly more than 35% lot coverage. So there's 4 exceptions that they are requesting from the normal townhome or residential standards. Again, we're looking at a piece of property that's remained vacant for for almost 30 years, and that's probably an indication that that shopping center is not going to happen. And so the request is to zone it back for residential use. If you look at the surrounding area, there's townhomes to the north, townhomes or duplexes to the west, and a townhome complex to the east. So townhomes here would be compatible with that surrounding area. The utilities have been reviewed, and they are adequate to allow or support townhome development, and the city's current comprehensive plan actually shows this as more suitable for residential than commercial use. This went before the Planning Commission initially in September. They held a public hearing at which there was a pretty good turnout, and they expressed support, the Planning Commission did, for land use change, and also they expressed support for the variations and exceptions that were being requested for the developer. And based on that support, they finalized their plan layout and came back to the Planning Commission on the 21st of October. And at that meeting, they recommended approval of the request to go from C2 neighborhood commercial to R2, which is townhome or duplex zoning, and that be approved subject to the conditions that you see outlined in your report and reflected in the ordinance. For Lot 9, which is the Crawford frontage lot, they agreed to keep everything that was in place in the original commercial plan development district, which had a very specific list of uses, so that property is not actually being changed from what it was historically. So the real change is on the 15 lots to the center of the tract to go from commercial to multifamily residential. So if you are in agreement with the Planning Commission recommendation, the attached Plan Development District Ordinance, which would amend the zoning from neighborhood commercial to townhome zoning, should be approved on first reading. I'd be happy to take any questions about the zoning aspect of this, and then there is a companion item that deals with the actual plat layout.
Questions of staff? I guess not.
I guess not yet.
Any public comment?
I have some questions.
Ma'am, if you'd come forward and give us your name and your address.
My name is Ann Newman, and I live at 2300 Village Lane, which I live at the corner of Fairdale and Village Lane. And I'm not against the zoning change. That's perfectly all right. My questions are simply curious. I want to know what the townhouses are going to look like. I'd like to know about easement. I'd like to know about home ownership rather than rentals. Those are questions that I have, and I don't know if right now is the proper time to bring those before the commission, but I thought I'd do it anyway.
If you would like to get together with Mr. Andrew, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer all your questions. And again, this is only first reading, so it'll have to come back before the commission
Okay.
a second time.
All right.
And if you do have concerns, we'll know about them in
After
between.
I talk to...
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
bet.
Some detailed information that can help you with that.
Is there any other public comment? I'll bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I'd move that application PDD 08-3 requesting an amended preliminary and final development plan approval and change in the zoning district from C2 to R2 on a portion of lots 1 and 2 and all of lots 3, 4, 5, and 6 and a portion of lots 7, 8, and 9, Block 8, Georgetown Edition be approved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve on first reading ordinance number 0810473, which includes application PDD 08-3. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0.
Item 7.2, acceptance of offered easement, right-of-way, and restricted access dedications, and authorize the mayor to sign the plat of the Georgetown Villas addition.
Mr. Andrew.
As I noted, this is a companion item that goes with the item that you just reviewed. This is a replat of the property in question, and the proposal is to create 15 lots. Each of those 15 lots would have a 2-unit townhome unit on it, and then there's a 16th lot identified as Lot 9, which has frontage on Crawford. And the proposal for providing access and services to the townhomes would be to construct a new public street, which would be proposed to be named Georgetown Court. That would be a U-shaped street that would come off of Georgetown Road, and that would provide access to all the townhomes. Lot 9 would not have any driveway or direct access to Crawford. You can notice that when you drive by, there's an existing curb cut north of Quick Shop, and on that curb cut, it's 30 feet wide. 15 feet of it is on this property, 15 feet's on the Quick Shop property. So the access to Lot 9, if that were to be a future office or some other type of use, would be a driveway that would come across from Fairdale off the north side of Quick Shop and into that property, and that would provide the legal access to Lot 9. We've met with Westar this morning, and they are satisfied now with the easements that have been provided for them. What you'll have is a roadway there that'll come in from Fairdale, and then at the north edge of that roadway will be the transformer boxes at the rear of the townhomes. That'll provide electricity there, but Westar is now satisfied that they have room for what they need to do there. This property is in a neighborhood park service area number 9, and within that area there's a fee collected to go towards acquisition of parkland or development of parks. So there will be a fee of $150 per dwelling collected at the building permit that'll go into that park fund. And I think from a public improvement standpoint, Georgetown Court will be a public street. And I think the primary discussion item with the Planning Commission was appropriateness of sidewalks and the best location. And what they came down with on a decision was recommending that sidewalk be required out on Georgetown Road on the east side of the property, and that the developer's responsibility would be to start that system leading from Crawford north on Georgetown Road. And so in their action on the 21st approving this replat, they reminded them that any new underground electrical must be placed underground. The plat has been revised to provide the necessary utility easements. As recommended, the sidewalk would be required on Georgetown Road only, and so this would come before you for a motion to accept the utility easements dedicated, the right-of-way for Georgetown Court as a public street, restricted access on Crawford for Lot 9, and then authorizing the mayor to sign the plat on behalf of the commission. I think with that, I'd stand for any questions about the replat.
Where would the sidewalk on Georgetown connect anything? There are no sidewalks there right now, including across the BWR property to the south.
There's a sidewalk section in their driveway, but I think we would probably contact BWR and attempt to work with them to get that piece. There is a sidewalk on the north side of Crawford, and so
just on the
you have to start somewhere where you're building a system. So we know we have sidewalk system on Crawford, and this would be the start of a system extending north, or at least feeding down to the Crawford sidewalk. But we recognized that it's going to occur in increments.
Okay.
Other questions?
I'm glad you addressed that question about, in Block 9, there will not be a street going into Crawford, correct?
That's
That
correct.
road is on the north side. Does it butt right into that Track 2? And I realize that this doesn't involve Track 2, but what happens to that little piece of ground? In the future, will there be a road then on the north end of that too, or will it ever allow a road onto Crawford?
Track 2 is where BWR's offices are. They have a parking lot on the north side of their building, and when we went back and looked at the original plan for access, there were options at the time, to come across the BWR property, but we found the existing drive and the evidence of an agreement that allowed basically the access to that middle piece will be from Fairdale only.
Okay.
If they were able to reach some agreement with BWR to connect to their parking lot, you might be able to get across the entire way there.
Okay.
What's awkward about this is that pieces have been sold off, and originally this was all one shopping center. It would have been easy to construct a road that went all the way across parallel to Crawford, but now that it's been somewhat chopped up, the guaranteed access will be to Fairdale. There's an option, if they could reach an agreement with BWR, they could access Georgetown as well.
Okay. And BWR is obviously aware that all this is happening.
Yes, when they built their facility there, they knew about that middle
Okay.
piece.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions of staff? Public comment? Not, I'll bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor Vanier, I move that we accept the offered easement right-of-way and restricted access dedications and authorize you to sign the plat of the Georgetown Villas addition.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to accept the offered easements and right-of-ways, restricted access dedications, and authorize the mayor to sign the plat for the Georgetown Villa addition. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0. Administration.
Item 8.1, second reading ordinance number 08-10470, levying Salina Business Improvement District Number 1 service fees for 2009.
This ordinance was passed on first reading November 3rd, 2008. Since then, there have been no comments received. Are there any public comments now? Not, bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor Vanier, I move that we pass on second reading ordinance 08-10470, levying the Salina Business Improvement District Number 1 service fees for 2009. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve on second reading ordinance number 08-10470. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Jelka,
Aye.
Commissioner Larson,
Aye.
Commissioner Peck,
Aye.
Commissioner Perney,
Aye.
Mayor Vanier.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Item 8.2, authorize Aquatic Design Consultants Incorporated to proceed with final design services and construction administration services for the new Family Aquatic Park.
Mr. Snyder.
Mayor and Commissioners, last June, Aquatic Design Consultants provided two options for the proposed preliminary design work of a new family aquatic center. Option one was a standalone agreement with no assurance to move forward with future design work, assuming the referendum passed. The second option, which you did approve in June, provided credit back to the City of Salina, the $33,760, the concept fee, design fee charged by ADC, if the tax referendum passed, and if ADC was authorized to proceed with the final design phase as well as construction administration services. During the work with the consultant on the agreement, city staff added language that allowed the city to opt out of the future work with ADC for any reason if the credit back option was selected. I can say to this point that we've been very satisfied with the work that they've done up to this point. The original agreement, even though it outlines the scope of work and total percentage amounts of each of the future phases of service, but with the added language, does require authorization from the city to move forward. The final design, construction documents, and bidding services phase is set at 7.5% of the total construction cost, while the construction administration services, facility startup, and construction observation is set at 1.5% of total construction cost. It is staff's recommendation the City Commission authorize Aquatic Design Consultants Incorporated, Lewisburg, Kansas, to proceed with final design services and construction administration services in the design and construction of a new family aquatic park. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Questions of staff?
I had a couple citizens bring a suggestion to me that I thought I'd at least pass along to you, but I don't know if this is even feasible. Obviously, we had the discussion leading up to the referendum on the 25 versus 50 meter pool,
and for a number of reasons, we decided to go with the 25 meter. At least, anyway, the suggestion was to potentially make that 50 meter pool an alternate option when it eventually goes out to bid. Would that be an expensive proposition to incorporate, ask for some design on that too, or would that be outside the scope of what we've been talking about?
I don't, we briefly talked about that when that issue came up this summer with the consultants, and I don't know, at this point, I'm sure it would take some extra design work to do that. I would want to talk with the consultants to make sure that that was feasible, but it would sure be an option that we could explore.
The reason this individual brought this up with me was the possibility, given the economic conditions at the moment, that this could potentially go out for bid in a favorable, at a favorable moment. I don't know.
That's a very, that's a good opportunity, a good possibility that may happen. We'll have to see, you know, how when we roll around to the spring. But I really believe that if we want to pursue that, that's an option we should look at or could look at. So.
Yeah, Commissioners, we can check and get a cost, if there is a cost difference for the design, to provide that alternate and get back with you if you need to take action on it. If there is no cost, it's pretty easy to incorporate it, but I presume there will be some cost for that design. It also provides an opportunity, possibly too, to extend the potential fundraising opportunity if, you know, if someone's interested in doing a capital campaign. So we'd have both options out there through the design process. So instead of basically saying we need to know now for that, it gives us time until, you know, say March.
In looking at the agenda and knowing that North Ohio Street is on our agenda today, with that in mind, I noticed in the contract that the engineer won't guarantee any of the performance of any contractor or subcontractor. Who will be watching over this process?
Well, I think ultimately it is the city's responsibility, but we are working, when we saw that language, we checked that language, had a question about that very language, that the consultant, if the subs and the prime contractor follow all the plans, then we shouldn't have that issue. And he will make sure or watch that particular aspect of the project with his routine inspections, that they are following the design criteria set forth in the construction documents. It will rely on city staff to provide some of the daily inspection, whether that's just like our normal projects, whether that's electrical or plumbing, HVAC inspection. So I think it's a coordinated effort between both the consultant and his role and the city staff as well.
We seem to have a problem with concrete in this town for some reason. Do we have someone capable of will there be tests on the concrete?
The testing of the concrete will be the responsibility of the consultant. And it is our feeling that the actual pool, the pool basin contractor will be pre-qualified in their ability to perform that particular work. Whereas a general can handle a lot of the buildings, the other HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and with their subs. That's the assurance that we need to have and that we feel is appropriate for the actual design and construction part of the pool basin itself with the concrete. And so I would, there's several large companies that only do pools, aquatic facilities, that will probably have a pre-qualification to meet that need, to make that list. Whereas the generals and the other subs can be local and probably will be, more or less. And then, but probably the actual pool contractor will be one of several that are pre-qualified. Hopefully that'll eliminate any potential with concrete issues.
Any other questions of staff?
Yes, could you please just briefly restate what the timeline is? If this is approved today, when do we see a completed aquatic facility?
I think the time frame that the consultant has talked to us about is to have final design and construction documents ready to go in late March with approval by the City Commission in April or early May, with contract ready to go so that a contractor can start and take approximately 12 months, maybe less, to have this open in May, end of May in 2010.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, could you, I don't mean to belabor this point, but could you say, just one more time, talk about the coordinated effort between city staff and the consultant here? So I want to be clear on who's inspecting.
Well, the contract identifies during the construction administration phase, I think there's 15 site visits. As I mentioned, it's probably going to be a year or less as far as the time for construction, the construction period. It's our indication with certain, I guess, how fast they move in at different aspects. There will be times that the consultant will be here maybe once a month. There will be times it will be 2 or 3 times a month, depending on the different process. There will be areas with steel, and this goes back to the mayor's comment with the concrete, tying steel and making sure that everything is the proper size and done properly. That consultant will be here at each time that those are done. If it's checking on the plumbing, HVAC, electrical service, that'll be done through the normal processes where the building, as they call for permits and inspections, will do that. So the designer, the consultant, will be here on some of those not that they're not all critical, but some of them are more critical, I suppose you should say, like the concrete work, and making sure that's done properly. He'll be here to be the one responsible for that.
Yeah, okay. I know we have similar agreements with various improvements throughout the city that haven't seemed to have worked out that well. So I hope that maybe the city can be there to watch over this process as well.
I think we'll have. I think you're going to have a combined effort from various city departments, not to put a lot of extra burden on the development services buildings, but Parks and Rec staff, as well as the consultant, who will be obviously monitoring all those plans and progression with phone calls and emails on probably a daily basis with us. So I feel that he has the experience and the backing and a lot of the history of building these type aquatic facilities, and from what we've learned, that he's very well on top of those particular problem areas.
Am I correct to understand that our existing pool will be open one more summer then?
That's correct.
Okay.
In 2009 will be open.
Okay.
Any other questions of staff? Thank you, Steve. Any public comment? Not, I'll bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor Venier, I move we authorize Aquatic Design Consultants, Inc. to proceed with final design services and construction administration services for the new family aquatic park.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize Aquatic Design Consultants to proceed with the final design services and construction administration services for the new family aquatic park. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0.
Item 8.3, Salina Airport Authority, sub-item 8.3A, first reading ordinance number 08-10471, approving the 2008 Salina Municipal Airport Rules and Regulations. Sub-item 8.3B, first reading ordinance number 08-10472, amending section 25-154 of the Salina Code to permit discharge of firearms by the Executive Director of the Salina Airport Authority or his designee on the airport property for wildlife hazard reduction purpose.
Mr. Johnson.
Mayor and Commissioners, as you know, you have 2 items in front of you, 2 ordinances. The first, 10471, is to approve the 2008 Salina Municipal Airport Rules and Regulations. The second item is a companion item, and I'll describe in a moment. The background I'm about to give you is provided by the Executive Director, Tim Rogers, who's here today. And if you have any questions after I speak, I'm sure that he can assist with those as well. Section 4-19 of the Salina Code authorizes the Salina Airport Authority to adopt and amend rules and regulations as may be necessary for the orderly operation of the Salina Municipal Airport. These rules and regulations were first adopted in 1967, and since that time have been amended by this governing body. The structure or the reason for these rules is to impose as reasonably necessary for the safety, preservation of facilities, and protection of the public interest. Staff in 2008 of the Salina Airport Authority committed to and prioritized a complete review and update of the rules. What you have before you is a set of rules and regulations that has been developed from scratch using cooperation from other airport, municipal airport structures, as well as a review by a 5-member work group that was asked to review all the provisions for their applicability and reasonableness. That work group met for about 5 weeks, very in-depth review, a lot of discussion, and in the end, their suggestions were incorporated into the rules and regulations you have before you. On November 13th, these rules and regulations were approved by the Salina Airport Authority as they are written. The ordinance that you have, 08-1047-2, is to amend, or excuse me, to then adopt and amend the 25-154 for unlawful discharge of firearms. During the review of these rules and regulations and the work on these, it became apparent that the wildlife hazard reduction part or piece of these rules and regulations was going to necessitate an amendment to this current Salina City Code. And just to give you a little background, the wildlife hazard reduction is imperative to the operation, the safe operation of an airport. And I'm sure we can provide more details if you'd like in that regard. The FAA has a set of guidelines and also some techniques that include the discharge of firearms to reduce wildlife hazards. Accordingly, Section 25-154 would prohibit the discharge of firearms on the airport property if it is not amended. Working with the Salina Police Department and Chief Jim Hill, the Salina Airport Authority coordinated a provision that specifically addressed discharge of firearms for wildlife hazard reduction in the rules and regulations. The ordinance you have in front of you reflects that cooperative agreement and would allow for the discharge of firearms for the specific purpose of wildlife hazard reduction on the airport by the executive director or his designee. The recommendation for both ordinances by staff is to approve on first reading with any amendments you would see necessary. And with that, I'll answer any questions you may have.
I guess my question would be to Mr. Rogers. You said that these rules and regs were developed from scratch. Is there going to be a prescribed time that they'll be reviewed and amended, or just as needed?
I think it's the anticipation that we'll begin a process of a biannual review of the rules and regulations, so we don't go so long with a complete review. Between complete reviews. Much of the changes that in this new set relates also to current standards related to airport security, NFP fire code, incorporating fire code into the current rules and regulations that really were not addressed in the old rules and regulations, new definitions related to, again, security, aircraft rescue, firefighting, airport certification terminology were incorporated in the new rules and regs. We'll probably make on a biannual basis the full review, but then as needed we may need to come back more frequently as other conditions, other items change as far as new rules and regulations that are issued by the Federal Aviation Administration or environmental rules and regulations that may come about. So we'll be on a 2-year review from here on out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And for my safety and comfort, you will have a designee to shoot the guns?
Yes,
okay,
I will.
Very good.
There will be a designee, qualified designee.
I'll sleep better at night. Thank you.
Okay. One other question for Mr. Rogers. In this section on specialized aeronautical activities, it talks about several unusual aircraft types. Is there a likelihood within the next few years that unmanned aircraft would ever operate directly from the airport?
It's very possible. We anticipate that will come sooner than we really expect, but in working in conjunction with both government and military agencies that operate unmanned aerial vehicles and unmanned aerial systems now, we think it will come first from that sector. Then soon to follow will be private sector operators of unmanned aerial vehicles. Kansas State University at Salina has established the Unmanned Aerial Vehicle, Unmanned Aerial Systems Program Office that is working closely with the state of Kansas and the FAA on new opportunities for Salina and Saline County to have these companies based here. We've already had companies that have been testing unmanned aerial platforms at the Spooky Hill weapons range. So we're really seeing that activity emerging today, and we see that will be part of our industrial aviation service center growth and development in the future.
Okay. Will that require an amendment of these rules and regulations, or are those in here and I just
It
didn't?
will not at this time, no.
Okay.
Other questions of staff from Mr. Rogers? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any public comment? Not, I'll bring it back to the commission for action.
Do you need two motions?
Yes.
Mayor, I move that we adopt ordinance 08-10471, approving the 2008 Salina Municipal Airport rules and regulations.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve on first reading ordinance number 08-10471, which approves the 2008 Salina Municipal Airport rules and regulations. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0.
Mayor, I move that we adopt ordinance number 08-10472, amending sections 25-154 of the Salina Code to permit discharge of firearms by the Executive Director of the Salina Airport Authority.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance 08-10472 to amend section 25-154 of the Salina Code that permits discharge of firearms by the Executive Director of the Airport Authority or his designee on airport property for wildlife hazard reduction purposes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0.
Item 8.4, first reading ordinance number 08-10475, authorizing the levy of sales tax.
Mr. Johnson.
Mayor and Commissioners, the ordinance in front of you is necessary to implement the 0.4% sales tax approved by the voters on the November 4th election. The governing body must provide by ordinance for the levy of that tax. And the state law also provides then that upon receipt of a certified copy of this ordinance levying the tax, the Director of Taxation shall cause such taxes to be collected and put into place. This ordinance also goes on to clarify and to enforce that the tax will be collected beginning April 1st, 2009 and end 10 years thereafter, and it recognizes that the 0.4% sales tax will replace the current quarter-cent sales tax. Recommendation is approval on first reading. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of staff? Any public comment? Bring it back to the commission for action.
Every year I move that we approve on first reading ordinance 08-10475, authorizing the levy of a 0.4% retailer's special purpose sales tax.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve on first reading ordinance number 08-10475. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0, and I would also like to thank the citizens of Salina for their forward thinking and passing this sales tax extension.
Item 8.5, authorize final payment to the Kansas Department of Transportation for the construction of the Waterwell Road I-135 interchange project.
Mr. Franz.
Mayor and Commissioners, in 2001, the City of Salina, Saline County, and the Kansas Department of Transportation entered into an agreement to construct the Waterwell Road interchange. Under the terms of that agreement, KDOT paid for 90% of the construction and construction engineering, and the City of Salina and Saline County split the remaining 10%. Of that, the City of Salina and Saline County were also responsible for other costs related to the project, such as right-of-way acquisition and so forth, and we split those on a 50% basis. Project's been completed for some time. KDOT's undergone their requisite federal audits of the program, and they have found that our initial payment was a little bit short of the final costs and are asking for an additional payment of $32,033.51 from each local participant, City of Salina and Saline County. And this will, of course, finalize that project then.
Questions to staff?
What year did we finish this project?
Probably 2002, 2003.
Commissioners, it's fairly typical that the, really, it's not just the Kansas Department of Transportation, but most of the various states' post-audit timelines are this far out. It's kind of frustrating, in my opinion, to the local folks that are getting the money when their auditors come back long after the project's over with, and they get into the numbers, and a lot of the actual parties that were involved in the project may or may not even be involved anymore, and they come out with this. But we took a look just to be sure that we're pretty comfortable with these, and from a technical perspective, and we are, so we think they're probably accurate, but it's just how they run the process.
This reminds me of back in 2002, we got one of these kind of bills for closing out the Crawford Street project, which had been finished in 1993. So I guess they're speeding up a little bit.
No. Yeah, and we have on occasion received bills like this. We have on occasion received a check. So it just kind of depends on how the project went.
Any other questions of staff? Thank you, Rod. Any public comment?
Just in time.
Bring it back to the commission.
Mayor, I'd move we authorize the payment of $32,033.51 to the Kansas Department of Transportation for the final cost of the water well interchange construction.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize a payment of $32,033.51 to the Kansas Department of Transportation to close the water well interchange construction project out. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0.
Item 8.6, General Obligation Tax Increment Financing Bond, Series 2008-B. Sub-item 8.6A, Resolution Number 086569, authorizing for public sale of general obligation tax increment financing bonds. Sub-item 8.6B, First reading ordinance number 08-10474, authorizing the issuance and delivery of the general obligation tax increment financing bonds.
Mr. Franz.
Mayor and Commissioners, this action will actually, I guess, initiate the financing for the Lambert's Addition development. This is where the coal store is currently under construction. Redevelopment plan and the development agreement committed the city to providing $3 million in tax increment financing for this development, providing that certain conditions were met. That agreement was approved on March 17th of 2008. Developers now met those conditions necessary for the bond issue to proceed. The resolution authorizes the offering for public sale of the bonds and provides for the issuance of the official statement, and then the ordinance authorizes the issuance and delivery of the bonds. Second reading of the ordinance is scheduled for December 8th, which is when the bids will be opened and presented for your consideration. Proceeds of the bonds will be allocated to the costs related to the development of Lambert's Addition. Development district includes the anchor for the location, which is Coles, as well as several outlots that are available for future development. $3 million of the proceeds will be committed to the project construction fund. Balance of the proceeds will be used to establish a debt service reserve fund to pay for the capitalized interest and to pay for the costs of issuance. These bonds are general obligation bonds, which means that the full faith and credit of the city is pledged to the principal and interest payments. However, they're also tax increment bonds, which means that the sales and property taxes generated by the development will be used first to pay the bonds. There's been a financial analysis done. It is believed that the district will generate sufficient revenues to cover 120% of the debt service on the bonds. throughout the period that the bonds are outstanding. Should note that the financial analysis was done using only the anchor location as a revenue generator, so the outlots were not considered in that analysis. Action at this time would be to pass the resolution and then to pass on first reading ordinance number 08-10,474. I'd be glad to try to answer any questions.
My favorite question, the timeline for the store to open and the cash flow to commence on paying this off.
Timeline for the store to open is, I believe, March 1st, and so we would start seeing revenues in about June from the sales tax, and of course the property tax revenues would not would probably not come due until 2009, perhaps.
One thing, Commissioners, we did in the development agreement is when we looked at the phasing of the payment of the bond proceeds to the developer when they qualified, we really wanted to get the first year increment up as high as we could. So we had a timeline in there related to a temporary certificate of occupancy to get that building along as far as it could be by December, because we know that's appraisal time. And I'll say they responded very well. So we're pretty happy about that. We expect to have a good property tax increment in the first year.
Other questions of staff? Thank you, Rod. Public comment? Bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor Venier, I move that we adopt resolution number 08-6569, authorizing for public sale of general obligation tax increment financing bonds, Series 2008-B.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt resolution 08-6569. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1 with Commissioner Joka dissenting.
You need the second resolution?
Second.
Mayor, I move that we adopt on first reading ordinance number 08-10,474, authorizing the issuance and delivery of $3,485,000 principal amount of general obligation internal improvement bonds, Series 2008-B.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass on first reading ordinance number 08-10474. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Aye. Motion passes 4-1. Commissioner Joka dissenting.
Item 8.7, authorize the mayor to sign the agreements for the North Ohio Overpass parapet wall repair and rail installation.
Parapet. Mr. Stack.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. The city in September sent out a request for proposal to some contractors around the state that do bridge repair, and we received interest from 3, an actual proposal from 2, and 1 that could guarantee getting it done by the end of the year. So we met with Progressive Contractors Incorporated as well as Wildcat. Wildcat was the other bid proposal that we received on November 7th. And then we met with HNTB and Wilson & Company on, the 5th. We met with them on the 5th. We met with Wilson & Company on the 7th and talked with both contractors again and decided that it would be good to hire PCI. They could complete the project like we wanted. Their approach to the project was good. The questions they had were legitimate questions that we worked out and felt like that it was time to get them hired so that we could complete it by the end of the year. Based on the timeline, we had to hire them as quickly as we could so they could order the materials, and that had to occur last Monday. They were able to order some of the steel for the project. So we utilized, asked Jason to utilize his administrative action, Salina Code 2-238, to basically get the contract signed so we could issue a conditional notice to proceed until such time we could come to the commission for ratification of the agreements. So that is a short synopsis of what's taken place over the last 2 months. I'm available, or 3 months. I'm available to answer questions.
Questions of staff?
Where is PCI located? Where are they from?
St. Paul, Minnesota is where their headquarters are. They have a local office in Topeka, and
Okay.
they do a lot of work with KDOT around the state. So that's where I actually went twice a week to meet with them at their local office there.
In Topeka? Okay.
Yes.
And there are no repercussions for PCI if they don't get the work done?
No, those were some of the things we worked out with her proposal. Was they didn't see any reason that they couldn't get it done. The weather, of course, is a factor, but they've got the staff available to do it. They can fabricate their steel on their own. A lot of people have to rely on a vendor or somebody else for that, so they can do that on their own. And then being able to install the railing at such time as have it done by the end of the year. The only thing might be the painting. There's a green paint we have to put on the wall, and that has to be done at 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So if we don't get another 50-degree day, I'll have to wait till spring. But at least it'll be open. The traveling public will notice very little difference.
Okay.
The other favorite question of the day is, who is doing the inspection on this work?
We have a city inspector, a new inspector that we've hired, and he's out there full-time. We're going to have CTL come down and take a look at the repairs as well. They did the analysis on the previous challenges with that bridge wall, and they'll be able to assist us. Wilson & Company has an inspector out there. HNTB has an inspector out there. There's a lot of people looking at this, but the bottom line is the city and CTL will, KDOT's out of the question, I guess, that's one thing that we know for sure. It's the city's responsibility at this point, and we are overseeing the repair of this wall and testing the concrete, for sure.
Okay. Other questions? Thank you. Any public comment? Bring it back to the commission for action.
I'd like to authorize you to sign the agreements for the North Ohio Overpass Parapet Wall Repair and Rail Reinstallation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize the mayor to sign the agreements for the North Ohio Street Overpass Parapet Wall Repair and Rail Reinstallation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0.
Mayor Vanier, I move to recess into executive session for 15 minutes to discuss with legal counsel matters subject to the attorney-client privilege, for the reason that public discussion of those matters would waive the privilege and adversely affect the city's interest in the matters, and reconvene in this room at 5:13 p.m.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn into executive session and reconvene at 5:13. Do you expect any action?
We do not.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We're in executive session.
Ayes between 55.